Welcome to Littell's All. Every family has a secret, and sometimes the darkest ones are hidden behind the perfectly painted fences of the suburbs. I am Le, and tonight we look into a will that didn't just distribute wealth. It distributed justice. The 30-day inheritance trap. Chapter 1. The Black Masks. They say you see the true face of a family at two events, weddings and funerals. For the Vance family, the truth was exposed the moment the last shovel of dirt hit my father's mahogany casket. Welcome to Littell's All. Every family has a secret, and sometimes the darkest ones are hidden behind the perfectly painted fences of the suburbs. I am Le, and tonight we look into a will that didn't just distribute wealth, it distributed justice. They say you see the true face of a family at two events, weddings and funerals. For the Vance family, the truth was exposed the moment the last shovel of dirt hit my father's mahogany casket. He was Arthur Vance, a man respected by everyone in this wealthy Massachusetts suburb, a brilliant businessman, a generous philanthropist, and to the outside world, a perfect father. But behind the closed doors of his $12 million estate, he was a controlling tyrant. I stood at the edge of the cemetery, far away from the relatives who were putting on a show of fake tears. I am Elias, the outcast, the stain on the family name, because I refused to follow my father's ruthless path, choosing instead to build my own life. It had been 5 years since I last stepped foot in that house. A few feet away, standing front and center, was Eleanor, my older sister, the family's golden child. Beneath those expensive designer sunglasses, I could bet my life there wasn't a single tear. She stood there, clinging to the arm of her slick lawyer husband, Richard. They didn't look like they were attending a funeral. They looked like predators waiting for a feast called the inheritance. Eleanor glanced at me. The corner of her mouth twitched into a smirk, sharp as a razor blade. She walked over, the smell of her overpriced perfume aggressively, masking the scent of the wet grass. "I didn't think you had the guts to show your face here, Elias," Eleanor whispered, her voice dripping with venom. "He wrote you out of his life years ago. Don't expect to squeeze a single dime out of that will this afternoon." I looked her dead in the eye. My calmness seemed to infuriate her. "I came to say goodbye to our father, Eleanor, not for the money." She let out a sharp, mocking laugh that pierced the quiet cemetery. "Save the righteous act. This afternoon, after the lawyer reads the will, I will personally have security throw you off the Vance property." "Good." I didn't reply. I just turned and walked away, leaving her basking in her delusion of victory. But what Eleanor didn't know was that the will, sealed inside the old lawyer's leather briefcase, was about to become the death sentence to her perfect little life. The air in my father's library was thick with tension, still smelling heavily of cigars and old leather. Mr. Sterling, the family lawyer for over 30 years, pushed his glasses up his nose and carefully broke the red wax seal on the envelope. Eleanor and Richard sat across from me. She intertwined her fingers, tapping her red nails aggressively against the oak table. Her eyes were hungry. Before I read the exact terms, Lawyer Sterling cleared his throat, the sound dry in the massive room. "Mr. Vance left a short audio recording. He requested that both of you hear it." He clicked an old tape recorder. Static hissed through the room, followed by the deep, authoritative voice of my father. My heart skipped a beat. "Eleanor, Elias, if you are hearing this tape, it means I am in the ground. Did you think I was blind? I built this empire from nothing. I can read the minds of the most ruthless men in business, and I can certainly read the hearts of my own children." Eleanor's face went slightly pale. Richard swallowed hard. "My estate, including the company shares, the $12 million trust fund, and specifically this mansion, will not be handed out easily. I have watched this family fracture for too long. Therefore, my will comes with only one condition: My father's voice paused. A dead silence filled the room. Both families, Eleanor and Elias, must move in and live together in this house for exactly 30 days. Starting tomorrow, no one is allowed to leave overnight. No physical violence is permitted. If anyone leaves voluntarily or breaks the rules, the entire estate automatically goes to the city's homeless charity. The one who stays until the end gets everything. The tape ended with a sharp click. Eleanor shot up from her chair, slamming her hands on the table. This is ridiculous. He was insane. Live with this failure for 30 days? I will contest this will in court, Mr. Sterling. He must have lost his mind. This will was drafted in the presence of 3 top psychiatrists, Eleanor, Mr. Sterling replied calmly. It is ironclad. You have the right to refuse. But if you refuse to walk through those doors tomorrow, everything goes to Elias. Eleanor snapped her head toward me. Her eyes were bloodshot with pure rage, but deep down I could see greed overriding her pride. She couldn't walk away from $12 million. Listen to me very carefully. Eleanor hissed through her teeth, leaning across the table. You won't last 3 days in this house. I will make your life a living hell until you are begging to pack your bags and walk out that gate. I slowly stood up, buttoned my suit jacket, and looked deep into her malicious eyes. Life is funny. They always think the quiet ones are the weakest. They have no idea that I am not the prey trapped in a cage with a beast. The truth is, the beast is trapped in the cage with me. I'm looking forward to it, dear sister. See you at breakfast. Chapter 1, The Black Masks. Welcome to Littell's All. Every family has a secret, and sometimes the darkest ones are hidden behind the perfectly painted fences of the suburbs. I am Le, and tonight we look into a will that didn't just distribute wealth, it distributed justice. The 30-day inheritance trap. Chapter 1, The Black Masks. They say you see the true face of a family at 2 events, weddings and funerals. For the Vance family, the truth was exposed the moment the last shovel of dirt hit my father's mahogany casket. The Vance estate was a sprawling Gothic-style mansion. Even in the daylight, it cast a long, cold shadow over the perfectly manicured lawns. Growing up, it never felt like a home. It felt like a beautifully decorated prison. And now, I was checking myself back in. I arrived at exactly 7 a.m. with nothing but 2 suitcases. 30 days, 720 hours. It sounded like a short time, but when you are locked inside with people who want to destroy you, every second drips by like frozen molasses. The moment I pushed the heavy oak door open, the silence of the house hit me. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence that waits for a scream. I walked into the grand dining room. Eleanor and Richard were already there, sitting at the far end of the impossibly long mahogany table. They were drinking imported espresso and eating pastries, as if they had owned the place for decades. Eleanor didn't even look up from her iPad. I see the stray dog found its way back, she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. I ignored her insult, pulled out a chair, and poured myself a cup of black coffee. The bitter taste burned my throat, waking up every sense in my body. Richard folded his newspaper and leaned forward, trying to look intimidating. Listen to me, Elias. We might be forced to share this roof, but we are not sharing our lives. Eleanor and I have established some ground rules. Rules? I asked, raising an eyebrow, taking a slow sip of my coffee. Eleanor finally looked up, her eyes narrowing. Yes, rules. You are forbidden from entering the West Wing. You will not use the main kitchen when we are eating, and you will absolutely not step foot inside Father's study. You stay out of our way, and maybe you'll survive the month. For a moment, I just looked at them. They were trying to establish dominance, trying to make me feel small like the frightened teenager I used to be. I set my coffee cup down. The ceramic hit the saucer with a sharp clack. Slowly, I stood up. I didn't walk towards the door. Instead, I walked straight to the head of the table, the master's chair. the heavy, velvet armchair where our tyrannical father had sat every single day of his life. A chair no one else was ever allowed to touch. I pulled it out. The wooden legs scraped loudly against the marble floor, echoing through the massive room. I sat down. Eleanor's jaw tightened. A flash of pure panic and anger crossed Richard's face. To them, sitting in that chair wasn't just disrespectful. It was a declaration of war. The will stated we share the property, I said, my voice calm, low, and perfectly steady. It did not state that I am your servant, Eleanor. There are no wings that belong to you. There are no schedules. I will walk where I please. I will eat when I please. And if you don't like it, I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. You know where the front door is. Feel free to walk out and leave the 12 million to me. Eleanor's face flushed red with absolute fury. She opened her mouth to scream, but stopped herself. She remembered the rule. No physical violence, no breaking the terms. She grabbed her silk robe, threw her napkin on the floor, and stormed out of the dining room. Richard quickly followed her like an obedient lapdog. I was left alone in the massive dining room. I had won the first battle of the morning. But as I looked at my reflection in the dark, cold coffee, I knew the truth. Eleanor wasn't going to play fair. If she couldn't force me out with rules, she was going to try to break my mind. Day one had barely started and the scent of blood was already in the air. The first day in the Vance estate has ended, but the true nightmare is just beginning. Eleanor thinks she has the upper hand, but karma is a very patient player. What happens when the dirty games truly start? Find out in part 2. If you want to see justice served, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and tell me in the comments, how would you survive 30 days in this house? I am Lay, and the truth will continue